The summer of 2026 has already furnished the world with two sensational stories that, though outwardly unrelated, share a striking narrative parallel. The first is the culture war storm surrounding Christopher Nolan's adaptation of Homer's Odyssey. The second is the sudden surge of an estimated 50,000 to 60,000 young Moroccan men of military age across the border into the Spanish North African enclave of Ceuta. The analogous elements are the epic poem Slaughter of the Suitors, Book 22, and Spain's response to an immigrant influx that overwhelmed border checkpoints, roughly doubled the city's population in a matter of days, and produced social disorder in overcrowded streets and makeshift camps. Both episodes illustrate the same moral sequence, a shocking abuse of the West's ancient and sacred duty of hospitality, followed by a predictable response. The West's understanding of obligatory hospitality is rooted in the ancient Greek concept of Xenia. Xenia was a code of reciprocal guest friendship that could bind families across generations. It required the host to offer water, food, shelter, and protection to a needy stranger without first demanding his identity or purpose. The stranger, in turn, was bound to behave with restraint and not to burden or endanger the household. Crucially, Xenia presupposed a coherent host community, capable of absorbing limited numbers, without losing its own character. Mass demographic transformation was never contemplated. A clear parallel appears in the Mosaic law. The Israelites were commanded to do no harm to the stranger sojourning among them, for they themselves had once been strangers in Egypt. They were even told to love the stranger as themselves. Yet sojourner status never automatically conferred membership in Israel. Full incorporation required circumcision and the worship of Yahweh. The biblical sojourner, like the Greek stranger, remained a guest within a defined people, not a destabilizer of a nation. Christian tradition deepened and universalized this ethic. The parable of the Good Samaritan presents the model of neighborly care for the stranger in need. Yet that care was never intended to become unlimited dependency. Christ, St. Paul, and the earliest Christian writings, including the Didache, all insist that the stranger must not remain entirely and indefinitely dependent on the charity of a community. Genuine Christian hospitality is real and obligatory, but it is also ordered and limited. Against this intellectual background, Odysseus' slaughter of the Suitors and Spain's resistance to the Moroccan surge appear as analogous acts. The Suitors were not refugees. They were aristocrats exploiting a temporary power vacuum, imposing themselves on Penelope's household in such numbers and for so long that their presence became intolerable, while also posing a direct threat to Penelope and the household servants. In the same way, the large majority of those who crossed into Ceuta were not fleeing imminent death, but seeking economic opportunity under the cover of a temporary breakdown in border enforcement. They treated Spanish territory as if it were an open resource rather than a finite community with its own order and limits. Western cultural elites routinely present such migrants as needy victims of global exploitation, collapsing the classical and biblical distinction between the individual stranger in need and the collective that arrives in numbers large enough to alter the host society itself. Confronted with egregious conduct, both Odysseus and the Spanish authorities chose strict fidelity to the ancient limits of hospitality, rather than an open-ended claim that hospitality has no numerical or cultural bounds. The Odyssey treats the horrific slaughter of the Suitors as both just and terrible, though the Christian tradition must view it as a heinous crime. Yet the alternative, allowing the household or Ceuta to be consumed, would have been a betrayal of the very tradition that commands hospitality in the first place.